Welcome, welcome. Today we're going on a afternoon. We're going to spend the afternoon with the Queen. And after Duchess Meghan spent that day with the Queen and came out with this outfit, the cape, I've got some pictures here. My email lit up. Boy, there was just... Can you show us? Can you show us? Can you show us? Can you show us? So I'm happy to show you. Happy that you asked. Happy to show you. I've done a lot of very careful observation on this little jacket. So we're going to take it from Day with the Queen all the way down to make it up in no time and wear with your blue jeans. It's such a classic look. It is the blouson, and yet the blouson concept where it was bigger on top than what was on the bottom. It's the same thing. The cape, the whole top is exaggerated, and then it falls below, and it's beautifully done. Givenchy is the house that did it. Absolutely beautifully done. There are things I cannot see, but I have looked at so many pictures, and I'm going to tell you that where you can as well, and details to notice. Pattern 75 is where I started because it was simply the cape. It was the shape of the shoulders, and I have made this cape before, and I knew where it hit me. So that's what I start. And if you are doing this, I would recommend you do the same thing. Take just the front and the back, the cape, and make it up. Before you do that, I'm going to recommend that you take some inches off because it is a short cape, if you notice. And again, I'm going to keep referring back to the pictures because, like I said, I've done a lot of details on these photos. Okay, so if you notice where the cape comes, it comes above her elbows. This cape does not, so I went ahead and I took 5 inches off. That took me a while to get there. It took me, gradually, and you may be taller or shorter, but I ended up taking 5 inches off. So the back, I took 5 inches off, left it like it was. The front, when you lay it on the front, it doesn't come all the way to the front of the garment. There's meant in this particular cape to have a little gap at the front. And so what I did is I figured out where that was. It's an inch short of the front on each side. It's meant to have a 2-inch gap. So I added an inch to the front to get that closure in the front because the cape that Meghan wore came all the way to the front. It was a center front on the fold. Okay, so then the pattern work. What I want you to see is this is what I ended up with, shorter, and then I also took out some fullness. So I just cut it across the bottom, took out some fullness, not changing here, just coming around there, and then I did the same thing to the back. Took out some fullness here, cut 5 inches off the bottom. That's the pattern I started with once I left 75. Okay, so those are the two pieces. Knowing full well, again, I'm going to talk about some details here, that this would not be Meghan's cape. This would not be, but it would give me the look. So the first thing I did is I cut it in this white. This is just like this. It's just a shorter and then tapering off some fullness here. I cut it in the white because hers was white. And really what I was wanting to show you all is what a great look it is and how good that look is on everyone. Across the board, this look is a really good look on everyone. Because underneath it is that sheath dress, and we don't know if it's a tank dress or we don't really know what's under there. You can't see it, but I'm going to just assume it's a sheath or a tank dress, and that look is great on everyone, especially when the cape is added on top and it's made to look broader on the top, which is what this is. So I wanted you to see a look, and you could do it in many ways. It doesn't have to have the belt contrasted. It could have it match. That would be a little slimmer look. Meghan has a very small waist. She's very small, period. And so you can see that contrast for her was not a big deal. All right, so create the colors you want and the way you want. And again, this is just the 2 pieces. It's done in a knit, so it's literally pull over your head. This white is fabric number 1787. It's a white ITY, so you can see it has great drape. Very simply done, literally 20 minutes to finish this top. Where we're going to just get harder is what we're going to do. This one here, I wanted you to see it's a Rebecca Taylor. It's fabric 1647, and I put it on a bias. And I wanted you to see what that bias look would be like. In this particular case, the back had to be left open because it's a woven. And so there has to be, I just put a little button closure at the back, and you put it on and just close the back up. Now, again, notice the fullness at the bottom on both of these. Okay, and a contrasting belt, navy, navy. There's just so many options you can do, but I just want you to get the pattern work, and then you can decide what you're going to do from there. Okay, so 5 inches off the bottom, 2 inches off the fullness in the side, because it's a 1/2 inch on each side, and then that's 4 times, front and back. Okay, then what I did is I went to Rebecca Taylor, and this is the Rebecca Taylor, and this is, as much as I can tell, the cape that Meghan wore. Obviously, I can't see the real garments, so there are some things I don't know, but pretty much all the lines, as many pictures as I looked at, I could see, and I want to point those out to you as to why and what, and then how to create the pattern. All right, so if you look at the back, what you see is, and I would just recommend you Google the pictures. The back is open. So that's how she got into it. It's wrapped around her neck. There's no other closures. And there's just a fastener at this on her back. And I just put a little button. Hook and eye, whatever you want to do. There's nothing at center front. And there's a seam that comes along. And I kind of drew it to highlight it that goes there. And there's also a little sleeve seam there. That seam dissipates. It actually disappears. It does not go all the way to that point. So the first thing we're going to do is make the pattern. Also, if you notice, and if you Google some of these pictures, and for those of you who really want to do it, and you know, I heard so many emails, you're going to weddings, you're going to here, and it's a great outfit. It's absolutely a great outfit. I think it's great. It could be done with jeans and a tank top and the cape underneath. It is really a great outfit. And don't limit yourself to wovens, knits, all kinds of fun stuff. But I do want you to notice a couple things. As I looked at these pictures, she cannot move her arms, just FYI. Well, I mean, she can move them, but there's very limited mobility. And in a couple pictures where she put her hand up to her head, the whole thing's wrinkled and the whole thing is skewed. And you can see that. And then, of course, she puts her hands back down and it restores. All she did was carry a handbag that day. She sat next to the Queen. Not a lot of mobility. So do decide how much mobility you want and kind of what you're, limit what you expect to get out of here. Now, the way you figure out how much fullness to take out. Remember, this has got the fullness here. I'm going to take it away from here. Is you wrap your tape measure around you with your arms down and just measure how wide that needs to be. All right, and the number I came up with is I made it 52. That at least gave me enough to where I could hold my arms out a little bit, but as I put my arms down, that's why it only has, and if you measure the bottom of this, it measures 52. That on this pattern, we're going to start with the front here, will give me how much to take away. And this is currently measuring 16, so that means the bottom of this one is 64, and this one's going to go down to 52. So that's quite a few inches to take away and quite a bit of mobility to be restricted with. But I'm going to take that away, and I did. So the first thing I'm going to show you is where I got to the first one. I took off, there's a band at the bottom here. Let me put this together for you here. Okay, so here's the original. I'm sorry, that's the back. You can see that's there. That goes there, and I'll explain all these parts in a minute. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is simply draw 2 inches up. You're going to draw a curved line that goes into the center front. That's this right here. And I had this line right here be 4 inches apart each other. That's a style line. That's complete style line. There's nothing built into that seam. Now again, this is all my speculation, but I got exactly her cape and I think I'm really, really close. So this style line was 2 inches from center front and curved around into the 2-inch band at the bottom. Also, this amount kind of mimics this amount. It's proportionate, which is why I also did that. If you are using the French curve, I'm going to give you the line the curve that I use. Basically, I started with 10 at center front and came around to 23 and then continued to the side. That'll give you just approximately the curve that I used. If you don't like that, you can do anything you want. Okay, so then I divided that front into 2 pieces is what I did. Curved it around. Now, so that yielded me this right there. That's the 2 pieces. there is a seam that's right there. When you look on her, if you look very carefully, there's a seam. And what that seam does is it allows the pattern to actually change angles that quickly. So that seam needs to be there. So I measured typically how wide I am, because you want it to be where your shoulder changes, and I'm 14 inches. So I went 7 inches out from center front. Okay, when this was together, I went 7 inches out from center front, and there's where I put my mark. I did that on the front and I did that on the back, because you want, this is going to be a seam that comes across, and you want that to be at the same place on both of them. And then what you're going to do is split this open. You're going to split and open that. Doesn't matter how much you open it, but you only want enough to get the seam. And the reason you're going to get the seam is because this is eased in. There's like a, well, on one side I put a shoulder pad, and on one side I did not put a shoulder pad. I wanted you to see the difference. This side has a shoulder pad. I think there's a shoulder pad in there. I can't tell, but I'm pretty sure there is, just from the way the whole thing hangs. It's got some support to hang off of, and I think that's from a shoulder pad. So I put a shoulder pad in here, and you can see how this side hangs out more so, and this side kind of almost has a tendency to go in. Your fabric makes a big difference. Again, we can't see what kind of structure is underneath there, so we're not sure on that. But I cut it there, opened it up, and then you're going to draw this out farther. So let me just show you how you're going to do that, because you're going to add some ease to it so that will ease in. So once this is opened up, I'm going to add a 1/2 inch, and I added a 1/2 inch on both the front and the back. So right there, as I open that up, I add a 1/2 inch. Then what I did is I did my tie interfacing first. Well, let's get the pattern done first, and then I'll go to the sewing machine. So this touches, there's only 2 pieces in the front. The curve, I divide the curve into the 2, this one and then this one. I add some fullness there, and that equals that. In the back, I'm going to do, it's a little bit simpler, because all the back does is it is divided at the center back. So what that means is that's where her mobility came from. When she needed to move something, it split and opened at the back, and we can see that in several of the pictures. And then of course it went back to normal. So I cut the 2-inch band off at the bottom, and of course that's going to go like that. Don't change those angles. And then here again, I marked out the same point on the shoulder point, cut it, and opened it. Okay? So when you cut that and open it, you're only going to open it, you know, a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, enough to just, I came 8 inches down, because that's about the size generally of an armhole or a shoulder seam, and then it stops. And you can see in some of the pictures, it just completely goes to nothing there. And then again, at the top of this piece, you're going to add about a 1/2 inch and taper to nothing, because you're going to ease that around. It's got to have more length to ease in. I took tie interfacing. All right, so that's the pattern work. Again, just 2 pieces in the back, 2 pieces in the front. Very simple, really very simple. But boy, is there there's a little bit of detail going on. Remember, if you don't want to get this complex, you go back to this, and this is a great look too. It doesn't have to be this precise. Okay, so then what I did is I sewed the front and the back together, these 2 pieces right here. These pieces right here are gone yet. The first thing I did was sew these 2 together right along the seam. Okay? It's this seam right there. I sewed that just from this point right here to this point right here. Then I did the tie interfacing this way. So I took, and you only need about 10 inches of tie interfacing, and you're going to ease it in, and it'll ease up that beautiful cap. It'll come in with this beautiful cap here. Then you go ahead and start just like a dart. It starts with nothing, tapers to nothing, and sew the seam that's going to go, whoops, hang on 1 second. My little thing came undone. That seam is going to go from here, and it's going to taper to nothing here. All right, and that's what creates that beautiful shape. It's what pulls it back into the garment. All right, then what you're going to do is I sewed the band together. I did that on both sides. sewed the band together, and I sewed this front seam right here and all the way around to the back. And I did that twice. I hemmed it. You can hem it, you can line it. I mean, whatever you want to do, as complex as you want to make it. I'm sure that Meghan's cape from Givenchy was lined. I'm just certain of it. I don't think it was just hemmed and left. And you can almost tell in just the way it hangs that there's some fusing in there or some stabilization in there. This particular fabric is a Rebecca Taylor. It's fabric 1635. It's got a little pink and black, a little black belt, and a black undertones. But you could do the same fabric in the dress and keep the whole thing, you know, to duplicate that look that she did. So there you have it. I hope you have fun with it. I hope you make it as complex or as easy as you want. My goal was to just kind of share it with you and show you that it's a great look. It's just a great look across the board for all of us. Make some kind of use out of it. Make a Meghan cape and go meet the queen. Happy sewing from Silhouette Patterns.